Light predates all civilizations and yet is a symbol of all culture and progress. Light is common in the most mundane of our activities, but enlightenment is synonymous with understanding, reason, and the highest aspirations of human culture. From stained glass windows to fireworks to disco balls, light plays a role in almost every human gathering. Come along as we explore the mysteries of light and share in the celebration. Light defines the winter months and the holidays within them. The days are short, the nights long, and across cultures, artificial lights are used in many different rituals to celebrate many diverse traditions. But what is light, and why is it such a reoccurring symbol in the season?
We don't see things, most things, we don't see them until light reflects off of them. You know, if we turned off all the lights in this room and closed the windows and everything, we would not see anything. So we need light in order to be able to see objects. We need the light to reflect off of those objects, and then we can see that those objects are there. And so there's, I think, this sense of when you're in the light, then you have better knowledge of your surroundings, you have better, well, it's the only thing that gives you the ability to see. I think the winter months, the solstice celebration, is a pretty primal need. When we're entering the solstice time, that's when the days are the shortest, and there's, you know, it's a dark time, and so we bring light into that to lighten that area. You know, one of the interesting things about light is if you have a dark room, it only takes a tiny bit of light to suddenly have a light room, right? Whereas if you think of the opposite, that's not true. If you have a light room and you bring a little bit of dark in, it doesn't suddenly make you describe it as a dark room. So I think light is, from that perspective, during the winter months and the solstice. I mean, most of the major religions that I know of have a celebration around that winter solstice. There's Hanukkah, there's Christmas, there's Buddha's birthday. You know, all these religions have something around the winter solstice. And I think it's, I mean, I believe all of those religious rituals are real, but the fact that they've become historically accumulated around the winter solstice is probably a remnant of that older tradition of celebrating light, bringing light into a dark space.
Well, I think that it's the importance of discussing this is to recognize that some of the common things that we experience in everyday life really have a big impact on our health. You know, what we eat, we've talked about exercise, how much light we have, how much sleep we get, how much joy and sharing we have with other people. And so those are things that are all very, very important, and light, of course, is extremely important because we are energized by light. We tend to work in light, whether it's artificial or real light. So light is extremely important. It's important to recognize when you don't have light that on a continuous basis can be a kind of a depressive thing. Now, you can have candlelight and romance. That's a whole different kind of light. But again, even that, you know, stimulates a whole different series of emotional, you know, reactions and energy. Light is the ultimate or the initial source of energy, and energy is needed by all biologic organisms, including human beings, to be active. And energy is one of the two major components in the universe. First is energy, then is matter or structure. And in many ways, some might argue that even matter or solids really are bundles of energy. So energy is extremely important to the human being, and without energy, we do not exist. Well, seasonal affective disorder, what's called SAD syndrome, which many of us experience here in Western Michigan because we have a lot of cloudy, gray days beginning sometime in maybe late October, November that extend through usually February into March. So there's a virtual absence of sunlight. And, you know, day after day without sunlight seems to deprive many of us of our energy. And that situation has been called seasonal affective disorder. Seasonal meaning, of course, happens in the wintertime. Affective means our affect or our emotional state. and disorder is sort of a medical labeling. Now, I don't personally think it's a disease as such. We have a tendency in our culture to make every problem a disease. But it certainly is a physiologic dysfunction, let me say, because we have absence of light, and as I said earlier, light is the original source of energy. And so we have to take steps to combat that. And number one step is to recognize that the gray days are going to tend to make us depressed and not as active and energetic as we normally would be. So it's very important to look at our diets, make sure our diets are good balanced diets that provide good energy. Number two, that we get enough activity and exercise, because depression often is obviated or even eliminated if one exercises. Now, it's hard to do if you're depressed, you don't feel like exercising. You're caught in that chain, so you don't feel like exercising for depression, you don't exercise, you get more depressed. So you have to set your goals and recognize what's happening. The third step that people have popularized is the concept of having a light source, a sort of an artificial sun, if you will, that comes on in the morning and tries to mimic, the rising sun. I think we've all been in situations where you're sleeping in a room and the sun comes up and comes to the room, and it's very easy to wake up. I've particularly noticed that in the Caribbean and Jamaica, where the sun comes in the window and all systems are go immediately, and it's very, very healthy and invigorating. So that's the third kind of treatment, and there are all sorts of fancy devices that try to mimic as close as they can, the sunrise coming in the morning. Some people have lights at their work, throughout the day, that where you normally might go outside and experience some sunlight, or like even this evening, and they use light other times of the day also. It goes back again to a little bit earlier what I said, is the light is the spark of energy, the ultimate source of energy, and celebrating is an energetic, joyous event. So it would make sense to have a lot of light and energy in those kinds of times. Otherwise, it wouldn't really be a celebration. If we all sat around in the dark with long faces and didn't say anything, it wouldn't be much of a celebration. So, light again provides that energetic stimulation and creativity in the mind, and a sense of joyousness and sharing that energizes all of us. And it's interesting that those light festivals, although we do of course have fireworks of the 4th of July, but tend to come in the wintertime, at least in this part of the country. And they are something we all look forward to, and most people don't really have SADs or seasonal affectives or until after the holidays. It's after the holidays when that long period, till spring is with us. Before that, we might have just as many gray days in late October, November, and early December, but we have those holidays and the lights of Christmas going up, and of course, Christmas lights are put up earlier and earlier these days. So again, that stimulates that energy and excitement and joy and keeps us all going and avoids us being in that seasonal affective mindset.
But humans do not only see by and set their biological clocks with light. Electromagnetic radiation, a small amount of which we recognize as light, is all around us.
How human beings react to light, primarily from a physics point of view, we would say that, again, the visible light, we react if these electromagnetic oscillations are within the range that our eyes can respond to, then we perceive them as light. If they're slightly lower energy than that, then we perceive it as heat. So heat and light are actually the same thing, but just different frequencies of vibration. So a little bit lower than visible light, that's the infrared, and that's where that name comes from. It's below red in the light spectrum, and we perceive that as heat. A little bit above violet, of course, then would be the ultraviolet, and we all know the damaging effects of ultraviolet. Beyond ultraviolet is X-rays, and so of course our bodies also are affected by X-rays. Low levels we can deal with okay, but higher levels can become quite damaging.
Not only do radio waves travel through us, ultraviolet waves help us to make vitamin D and can tan and sometimes burn our skin. Our own bodies radiate light in the form of infrared waves. Radio waves, microwaves, X-rays, gamma rays, light and heat, all of these seemingly different things are forms of electromagnetic radiation. What structure allows light to do all of these different things? Despite millennia of fascination by light, no one fully knows the answer.
There are huge aspects of mystery to light. As physicists, we have several ways of understanding light, and they're almost contradictory to each other, which is an indication that we don't actually know the definitive answer to that question. But the way that we tend to address that question is when light is in transit, we view light as a wave, and it's a wave made of oscillating electric and magnetic fields. And we can identify those oscillating electric and magnetic fields as light whenever they're in a frequency range that is about 100 million vibrations per second. In that range, we call it light. Slower than that, that's what we call radio, TV waves, microwaves, and so forth. Higher than that is X-rays, gamma rays, and things like that. So it's a type of electromagnetic wave. That's the way we describe light when it's in transit. However, when light interacts with materials, it doesn't act like a wave anymore. Instead, it acts more like a particle. And the way that we describe that in physics is a packet of electromagnetic energy, and it interacts with any material in discrete packet-like ways. What's called the wave-particle duality was first understood with respect to light, and that's actually what I was talking about a moment ago. There are experiments that we do that light acts like a wave. If we shine light through a slit, it spreads out like a wave would spread out. But when we let it interact with the material, it interacts more like a bowling ball or a ping pong ball or something. It doesn't act like a wave at all. And so there's this wave-particle duality. Sometimes we have to describe light as a wave, other times we have to describe light as a particle. And that was, as I said, first discovered with light. And what quantum theory tells us is that's also true of things like electrons, and matter also has this wave-particle duality. But there's a lot of mystery of light and a lot of fascination with light. Throughout the ages, people have been really fascinated with light and trying to understand it. If you had a room that was totally full of light, it would appear dark. You would only see that that room was full of light if you put something in that room and let it reflect off of. So to me, that's one of the fascinating things about light, is that you only see reflected light. You know, if I call your sweatshirt blue, you know, if I turn off all the lights, it's not going to look blue. It only looks blue because when there's white light impinging on it, it absorbs the other colors and reflects back the blue, and then I can see that it's blue. So light is what allows us to give all these descriptions, you know, colors and often even textures we perceive with light. You know, the whole idea of a lot of optical illusions is we make an illusion of texture on a flat page, and you know, it's our vision that allows those things to give us perceptions. I think another interesting thing about how we see is, as I said before, we don't see most things. We wouldn't see them if it wasn't for the light that's reflecting. And we don't see light as it travels, say, from the sun to the earth. You know, that whole space in between is dark. We don't see light itself. We see light as it reflects. One of the things I do when grade school kids come out to campus for visits is I'll shine a laser through a room, and you can't see the laser, but then if you'll clap some eraser dust, all of a sudden you see a nice trace of the laser beam because it's reflecting off the chalk dust. And it's to help them think, you know, to help them be more fascinated with the fact that I can't see light from point A to point B, but when it reflects off of B, that's when I start to see the light. And that's a fascinating thing about light. And then other really interesting things, of course, are all the optical illusions that we have, some of which are mechanical. You know, if there's a mirror in the restaurant and I don't know that it's a mirror, I think that there are people there. Reflected images can be just as real to us as the actual image. And we can create all kinds of illusions with mirrors. We have all kinds of illusions for seeing light through water or through gasoline fumes. If you're at the gas pump, that waviness that you get is, you know, an illusion because the light is bending as it's going through the different materials. So those, I think, are really interesting things about light. And then also the illusions that are more Western constructs, the illusions that are based on our few centuries of learning to see 3D images on a 2D page. I mean, it took and not all cultures see those kind of optical illusions. It's only cultures that have a long history of identifying a 2D image with the 3D experience. Then you would see all kinds of these crazy Escher contradictions and those sorts of things. But those are cultural. Not all cultures will see those things as illusions because you have to have that sense of depth in a 2D image to see those things. So all of those things, I think, are really fascinating aspects of vision and of light. I'm not sure if they're related to Christmas lights, but But light is a lot more than Christmas lights or the menorah or the candle on the Buddhist or Hindu altar.
Some say the light bulb is the greatest invention of the modern age, and it is the electromagnetic aspect of electromagnetic radiation that makes this possible. But has one of the most important uses of electricity become so common that it is taken for granted, summoned with just the flick of a finger?
I would say definitely in our society it certainly is. I mean, the ability to manufacture light allows us to make use of a much longer period of time to do things like reading or cooking or sewing or knitting or gardening or, you know, all of the things that we do to keep our society functioning rely on having more light than just the light that is provided to us through the day. So I think that that's a very accurate thing. Here's another interesting interjection. Michael Faraday was the British scientist who discovered that we could make electricity. This is, you know, the electric light bulb you're talking about. We can make electricity by basically spinning a coil of wire in a magnetic field. And when he did this, it was considered more of a party trick. And the King of England said, "Oh, that's really cute, Michael, but what good is it?" And Michael Faraday's answer was, "One day, sir, you will tax this." And I think, you know, that's another indication of the importance of electricity. And certainly one of the huge reasons why electricity is important to us is to have light so that we can extend our working time and our entertainment time as well, of course.
Light and electricity have become common enough to significantly change our lives. But has this technology had any effect on these older traditions of light?
I think it has a danger of making it more trivial because you know, we're very accustomed to having light even in the darkness of night now. I mean, my children often stay up until 10 or 11 at night doing homework, which they couldn't do if we didn't have, you know, either electric light bulbs or kerosene lamps or candles or something. We would need some form of light to be able to keep reading and those sorts of things past the natural darkness. So we're fairly accustomed to having artificial light, whereas, you know, in times past, maybe it was not such a natural thing that every day you would light lots of lights and extend the darkness to a further, or extend the light into the darkness. So yeah, that may be why people go so overboard with Christmas lights all over their houses and all of this kind of thing, rather than, you know, simply candles on your tree or candles in your menorah or a candle on your altar if you're Hindu or Buddhist. You know, those are the more traditional ways, as a single candle or a few candles rather than covering your house with lights. But I like looking at the lights on the houses too.
The solitary candle can inspire as much awe as extravagant displays of light. Electricity and other technologies allow us to celebrate not just privately but publicly, spreading our joy and appreciation to others.
It enabled a lot more publicity of this tradition, including, you know, building big public menorahs. Part of the tradition is to put the menorah in a public place, is to spread out to publicize the story of the miracle. And with media and television, that helps us publicize it, you know, tenfold and hundredfold. Jews have been lighting the menorah for over 2,000 years. It's in commemoration of the miracle that happened with the menorah, with the candelabra in the temple. When the Jews came back to the temple, they re-sanctified it and they cleaned it up and started to return it to normal. They had a problem. There was only a small. They were only able to find a small jug of proper oil for the menorah, and in order to make new proper oil would take 8 days. So this little small amount of oil lasted for those 8 days. That's why we light the Hanukkah menorah for 8 days. Every day we add another light. It's to show us that we have to add in our good deeds every day.
These different traditions have had many different ways of celebrating. Many celebrate the remembrance of significant events, like Hanukkah's menorah celebrates the miracle of oil. Another symbol of a miracle is the Christmas tree.
Our trees are decorated by our very talented and generous volunteers. They work for 2 weeks decorating all the trees. And there's a number of processes from shaping the trees to making sure all the lights work. And then the topper, the garland, the ornaments, and last is the skirt. The Christmas tree in America as we know it originated in Germany. Some of the other holiday traditions that we may have experience with are the first designed and mailed Christmas card is from the English, and baking special Christmas cookies started in Germany. The Finnish have a ritual where they place candles on the graves of their loved ones. In Iceland, they end the holiday season on New Year's Eve with bonfires, and they feed them with discarded paper and trees. If you look at the Ukraine tree here on display, you'll notice there are ornaments that look like spider webs, and that is from the story that was told that a spider spun a web and that delighted the baby Jesus.
With so many different ways of celebrating, everyone has their own favorite holiday tradition.
Oh, we have in our home still the old traditional candles that you put on the tree, and we also do have the little twinkly electric lights, but always on Christmas Day we turn off the electric lights and light the candles on the tree. And of course, to do that you have to stay and watch the tree. You can't light the candles and then go in the kitchen and make a cup of tea. So I think that is probably our family's ritual with lights, is to have the actual burning candles on the tree. Yeah, that's one of my favorite traditions.
Well, with Hanukkah there is a few traditions, like we do play a game. It's a dreidel. It's like a little top you spin around. It's there to remember the hard times that came before Hanukkah. Is that many Jews, they couldn't not study the Torah, so they would use this game as a disguise. They would be studying, and whenever they would hear Greeks coming, they would pull out their tops and start playing this little game.
Actually, my favorite part of the holidays are walking at night in the snow and viewing all the different Christmas lights. So I would have to say that's my favorite part of the holiday season.
It seems every culture has some ritual near the winter solstice, and as we come together and share our heritage, it gives us even more reason to be merry and joyful. With so many traditions and ways to celebrate at this time of the year, it is no wonder we call it the holidays.
I mean, people have always been fascinated with light, and there's all the symbolism of aligning light with purity and aligning light with goodness and aligning light with that higher spiritual aspiration. And that also may be part of how the winter solstice in particular got connected to these important religious events. The two more pagan rituals that have gotten connected in just about every world religion are the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And so those are both aligned with big events in all the religious traditions. And I think maybe it's that aligning of light with that pureness inside of ourselves. And even the Hindu tradition that talks about the various energy levels in your body, and each one has a different color of light associated with it. And then when you get to the highest level, that's when you're to the white light. All of those sorts of things, I think, indicate a really deep and ancient fascination with light that humans, I think, have always had. I mean, fire is the beginning of civilization, right? So that's heat, but that's also light. Both of those, I think, are important. I've always been fascinated with light, and it shows up all in every religion and every culture.
There's a saying in the Talmud, a little light dispels a lot of darkness. Light symbolizes good deeds, kindness, godliness. It's every person's job in the world to light up the world, to light up the darkness.
Hanukkah, Christmas, Diwali, Kwanzaa, Yule, New Year's Eve, and many other traditions celebrate light and its unending significance in our understanding of the world. From the first spark of fire to the speed of light in a vacuum, which is the c in Einstein's famous E=mc², light has played an important role in human life since the dawn of time. Is it any wonder, then, that we celebrate with light, especially in dark times? Or that every celebration with light, whatever that light symbolizes, is in part also a celebration of light itself and its enduring mysteries. To order a DVD copy of Holiday Light, A Celebration of Illumination, please call WGVU at 1-800-442-2771.